You know, I was just thinking, Terry McAuliffe was shocked once when we were talking, and I told him when I was a boy I lived on a farm without any indoor plumbing. I thought that was good enough. Now he's got me being born on a dirt floor. He'll always do you one better. The reason I like to travel with Terry is, you know, I began to think that at my age, which sadly I look, it was somehow unbecoming and undignified for me to be as high energy and enthusiastic as I am. But I can't help it. I get high on whatever I'm doing every day. But I realized if I just had Terry by my side, people would think I was permanently overdosing on Prozac. I love you, Terry. Thank you for doing this. I want to thank my great friend Hani Masri for the work he's done with TYO. You and Cheryl have been so good to Hillary and me. I want to thank Samia. Thank you for co-chairing this with Terry and keeping him from flying off into some distant place in outer space while you got this done. My great friend Quincy Jones, thank you for being here tonight. And Ambassador Otaiba, thank you. Congratulations on your recent wedding. I know something about those things. Between the two of us, we should have stimulated the global economy enough to get us out of this recession. I don't quite understand why we didn't. Terry was kind enough to mention Hillary. I want to thank Milan Verveer, who's here, who represents her advancing the cause of women and children around the world. And Judith McHale, thank you for what you do in the State Department. And I'm really thrilled to be here tonight with Cherie Blair. It's been a long time since a lady said in front of this many people that she wanted to spend more time with me. That just shows you that I'm of no newsworthy interest to anybody anymore. I like that. Actually, there is something serious here beneath that laugh. I think Tony Blair has done a really good job in the Middle East, representing the quartet, trying to promote economic development. And Hillary has intensified her involvement a lot lately. And we are all hoping and praying it'll work out. One of the people who will be most rewarded for a lifetime of passion is here also. Yossi Balin, thank you very much for everything you did to try to make that peace. But I've been thinking about this a lot lately. 2010, for me, represents the 15th anniversary of three things that are very important. We ended the genocide in Bosnia. We normalized relations with Vietnam. And we had the first huge agreement to hand over land under the peace accord signed in 1993 on the White House lawn. And 3 weeks later, Yitzhak Rabin was killed, in no small measure because of the land handover. I believe with all my heart that had he not been killed, we would have made a comprehensive peace in the Middle East by 1998, and we would be in a different world today. And the people wouldn't be stuck in camps in Nablus. They would be doing great things. We have the chance again. Everybody knows within 2 degrees of difference what a peace agreement would be. But as Cherie said, neither she nor I has anything to do with it anymore. And I was really excited when she first came to me and told me what she wanted to do with her foundation to promote women entrepreneurs, and then told me she wanted to work in the Middle East. And then she found Hani, and it was a marriage made it's hard to imagine Hani making anything in heaven, but this was a marriage made in heaven. I say that, anybody who's ever played cards with him knows that. But they have made together at least 3 commitments I know of at our annual meeting of the Global Initiative to empower women and girls both in Nablus, Palestinian and Israeli women in northern Israel. They're working at this. This is serious. And I say that because there is something we can all do. We did an interesting thing at last year's CGI that raised no money, but I thought it was important. We had a special session with Prime Minister Fayyad, President Perez, and the Crown Prince of Bahrain. And we did something that nobody ever did. I said, I will not tolerate any discussion on how to resolve the settlements dispute or what's going to happen to Jerusalem or how we will work out the Temple Mount issues or any of that. I said, let's just assume that yesterday a final peace agreement was agreed to and signed. Now, imagine what it would mean and what the rest of us could do to help it take hold. It was the sort of exercise that I don't think anybody in the room had ever been involved in. But we talked about things like the project that Cherie and Hani tried to advance. And there they were. You had these, I mean, Shimon Peres is devoted half of a very long life. He's one of the few people on earth left who's older than I am. To thinking about how to get there, but he always was writing books about what it would look like when it was over. But generally, we don't do this. So here were these 3 smart people and all the people in the audience. Everybody was imagining what would happen on the day after. What would the enemies of peace do? How could you thwart them? How could you maximize the benefits of peace even as the guarantors, presumably the United States and the Quartet, tried to minimize the risks of peace? It was a breathtaking thing because every single person, and a lot of us who've been digging in this ground for years and years, have to fight all the time not to get down, not to get cynical, not to give up, not to run out of energy. Everybody walked out of that room euphoric because they were reminded why they had labored so long for the resolution of this conflict. And so, first, I want to say that the work we honor tonight that Cherie and her foundation are doing with Hani and his is profoundly important because this work and all these projects empower women and improve everyday economic conditions, increase educational opportunities, and frankly involve more social empowerment, without which you can't have a balanced society. That is a very good thing. But in a larger sense, for a lasting peace to take hold in the Middle East, first between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and then we all hope and pray between Syria and Israel, resulting in a genuinely independent Lebanon, there has to be a more equal and balanced role for women in the daily life of society. And we know that when women can start their own businesses while they raise their children, or not, as they choose, and run for office and have a reasonable chance of winning if they're the best candidates, when they can participate in life, the society is stronger and people have less interest in conflict. You know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately for a whole lot of reasons, mostly rooted, I think, in almost on the part of men anyway, unconscious put-downs and constraints put on women in so many societies. Women seem to be naturally better than men at letting go of the past, and of not giving in to the perils of pride, and of embracing basically the necessity in life of practical reconciliation. I mean, think about it. When a man does that, Nelson Mandela, Yitzhak Rabin, the Dalai Lama, I can think of a number of others. When they do that, we give them the Nobel Prize. Once in a while, we give women a Nobel Prize for that. My friend Wangari Maathai and Aung San Suu Kyi. But basically, when men let go of their pride, to reach across divides, to let go of the past, to sort of rise like a spiritual phoenix, it is thrilling to us. But you know, millions and millions and millions of women have to do that every single day just to keep their kids alive and get through the day. We don't think a thing about it. I was thinking about it the other day. I went this summer to visit the farming projects we do in Malawi and Rwanda, where I try to help people get better seed and fertilizer and kill the pests and avoid giving up half their income by having to pay a middleman to take their crops to market. We take them directly. And so we went out to visit one of our farming projects where we were helping these farmers who had average acreage of 1 acre grow corn and soybeans. And I always ask to meet with the people we're working with because they'll tell me the truth about what's wrong with what we're doing. So they had about a dozen farmers there. And inevitably, they choose a spokesperson. There was one woman there. She was chosen the spokesperson. She had the smallest farm of anyone. She had been widowed, and she was young when she was widowed. She only had 1 child. And as all of you know, in most poor places in Africa, and sadly even in Haiti in our hemisphere, too many of the poorest families have to actually pay tuition to send their kids to school. She only had 1 child, but her child had never been to school because she only had 1/4 of an acre. And in the year before we went to work there, her income was $80. She and her child lived on $80 a year. So she started talking. And first thing I said, tell me why they picked you. She said, I had the biggest increase in percentage terms in my income on my little farm. And I said, well, tell me what happened. She said, well, by the time I got through using your seed, your fertilizer, and your pest killer, my yields increased 2.5 times. And then when you took my crops to market and sold them, so I didn't have to pay an agent, it doubled again. So instead of $80, I made $400 this year. And I said, what is the major consequence? She said, for the first time in my life, my son is in school. Now, I say that this is just one woman. I don't even feel great about it because I know there's another umpty-dump 100,000 in Africa alone that we haven't reached. The point I am making is these guys were very moved by this woman. She didn't go around complaining. She didn't wear her resentments on her sleeve. She was just happy all of a sudden things were working out for her and she could take care of her son. All over the world, that's what women do. They give up their resentments day in and day out in ways that most of us men are sometimes boneheadedly blind to because we do not understand the countless ways in which, through a cultural process, women have been confined and put down. So when you empower them, they almost always don't waste 2 seconds trying to get even, settle scores. They just get the show on the road. They're into constructive reconciliation, practical building. Maybe it's built in the DNA code, but I am quite certain it has something to do with having to learn to live with constraints that most men don't. That means that these projects are important not just in the Middle East, although they are, and I want to say a little more about that in a minute, but they're important because they will show the world why this should be done in the poorest countries in Southeast Asia, in the remotest areas of Latin America, in the poorest areas of sub-Saharan Africa. The rules are pretty much the same. And then it's important because the Middle East is embarked on a frantic commitment to modernization. And for the first time in my adult lifetime, in more countries than ever before, women are at the core of it. It is taking a different shape and rhythm in different places. But there are more women than men in institutions of higher education in Saudi Arabia today. So much so they got a real problem trying to figure out how to even up opportunities in the workforce. The UAE ambassador will tell you that the UAE is doing two things to stake its claim to a different future. One is they've invited New York University to establish a true international university. They're doing a little bit different. Qatar had a lot of different American universities open different schools. They're building a comprehensive university. More interesting, they defeated Germany in the contest for who would get the headquarters of the new International Green Energy Agency by promising to build the world's first new city that is, the whole city, 100% carbon neutral. No greenhouse gas emissions in the oil center of the universe. Now, and by the way, they have set about doing this. I could give you lots of, and Bahrain, they make economic policy with a body that is 50% government, 50% private sector, where women are fully represented, and they organize every year's economic policy around the World Bank rankings on how attractive the country is for new investment and job growth. And in 3 years, they've moved from 43rd to 13th in the ranking because that's what they do. Women are fully represented in both the public and private side of this decision-making. There is this whole thing going on, which is another reason I desperately want this peace made so that Israel can take advantage of the Arab peace offering. They want not just a security partnership, but an economic and political one so that the region can bloom. If Israel was at peace and had normal relationship with all these countries, now that they're finally committed to escaping the blame game into the building game, as a region committed to the future, it would be breathtaking. But one reason it will work best is if there's a peace, is that the Palestinians have generally been more comfortable with full participation of women than many of the other cultures in the neighborhood. And people will see and feel it, and then it will permeate a lot of other activities. So this is a big deal. This is not just what you see, and I'm telling you, I know about these projects. They're good. They're doing a lot of good. They have inherent, independent merit, but the potential to empower more women, to reach across all these divides, to let all this stuff go, to do what you'd give a guy a Nobel Prize for as a normal way of building a new future is staggering. And look, whether this deal gets done or not in the near term is largely up to players that are not present here. But the more attractive it looks, the easier it will be to overcome the naysayers. And the more you do for women, the more you empower them, the more you enable them to educate themselves and their children, the more likely that is to happen. So I ask you to think about that. You should keep supporting Hani's organization. You should support Cherie Blair. She's serious, and she's done work in other places as well that's really worth looking at. I got all these lists of all these projects they've done just through the Global Initiative with us. So think about that. I know you have a lot of demands on your time and money. I know you could give away all your money and never touch half the things that you think have merit. But if you want a peace in the Middle East, you have to give people the confidence to seize it. And you have to give people the capacity to imagine what it would be like. And you have to overcome the resistances that are still there that at least gray-haired guys like Yossi and I think don't amount to a hill of beans, but still seem to have an enormous psychological hold, more on men than women. So empower the constructive reconciliation forces of the world. Support these people in what they're doing. And remember that it's wrong to deny education, capital, training, access to the world's benefit to half the world's population that every single day, just to raise their kids with dignity, just to get through the day, do things to let go of resentments, subdue their pride, and reach across divides that we give men awards for doing. It is part of the fabric of their lives. Lord knows what they could do if they had the same chances. Thank you very much.